All K&S Society Talk Live episodes may contain subject matter that may be too mature for listeners under 18 years of age. If under 18 years of age, get your parents' or guardian's permission before listening. Also, views discussed on any K&S Society Talk Live show does not reflect our personal opinions or opinions of our supporters. Thanks for listening to today's show, and I hope you enjoy.
Here's the lovely Mike McGuirk. The World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, the Hart Foundation.
Let me get up, excuse me.
And his opponent.
Look at that hairdo.
Led to the ring by his commanding
bimbo dolls.
officer,
Will you stop?
Adnan, weighing in 310 pounds, is Sergeant Slaughter.
Here's the lovely Mike McGuirk.
Currently in the ring, weighing in 230 pounds, and hailing from New York City, New York. Here is
a good shot of this.
Don Steele.
Look at that hair.
Don Steele, I think he's got a nice haircut for a youngster.
A nicer haircut than McGuirk.
Weighing in at 468 pounds.
Soon. And the Undertaker is here. Better be careful, Mike McGuirk. He'll embalm you in a minute. And those little kids are eating WWF Superstar cookies. They got cookie bread. Look at that hair.
You are obviously infatuated with Mike McGuirk.
Will she ever comb her hair when she wakes up in the morning? He's got better looking hair.
Here's your winner, the Big Boss Man.
Happy youngster. Here's Mike, the lovely Mike.
Yes.
Here's your winner, Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Here's Mike.
Here is your winner, the Mountie.
Catchy tune, huh?
What disgusting music.
That was Mike McGuirk.
Get the official word from the lovely Mike McGuirk.
Bow wow. You should get a haircut like these two. These two are better than her.
This is what you'll be hearing at WrestleMania.
I hope not that squeaky voice.
Here's the lovely Mike McGuirk.
Here's your winner, Terry Von Erich.
Let's go up and get the official word from the lovely Mike McGuirk.
Here is your winner, the Model Rick Martel.
Here's Mike.
Mike should be in that urn.
Will you stop?
Here is your winner,
Now, what's with the baggie?
Undertaker.
That's some kind of special dirt in there, Anvil. They're on their feet here.
Jim
The lovely Mike McGuirk giving us the win.
And welcome to K&S Society Talk Live's Holiday Special. We are very happy for you to join us today, and today we have a very special guest joining us right now. She is the legendary and beautiful former WWF ring announcer, the lovely Mike McGuirk. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. Hello to everyone out there. Got a big smile on my face because I listened to that montage of beloved Bobby the Brain Heenan, and I've told many people a lot of times. I mean, I had no idea what he was doing, saying anything until years later. And I never got to thank him because had he not done all of that, it was simply a matter of him really putting me over. And because back in the day we didn't have such that it wasn't so crossed. You know, you really had a definite bad guy, you had a definite good guy, babyface heel, and most people would take up for me, or they would come up to me and say, "Gosh, do you know what Bobby Heenan says about you?" And I'd be just like, "No, well, God." So it makes me smile, and those were great fun days. And hey, I want to thank you all for doing such a wonderful entrance. I mean, gosh, I almost feel like Elvis.
No, it was a lot of fun just listening to all those intros. And when I was putting it together, just listening to Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon, it's like it was the whole heel and the heel and villain type commentary team there. But to have Gorilla always introduce you as the lovely Mike McGuirk, and Bobby Heenan, no matter what match it was, always had something to say.
Oh God, I know, which only it only helped me, because when they, and it's true, the old adage of and the saying of, if they're not talking about you, then you're you better bow out. But if they're talking about you, look. When they and all of this, and I not to discredit anybody on sexual harassment or anything like that. Just let me tell you, if it wasn't for sexual harassment, I would never get a compliment, because they've gone down to where now if somebody says, "Hey, you're looking hot out there tonight, Mike," and that's how the guys would talk to me. Not every one of them, but the ones that it was closer, because that wasn't very common for them to even to give you a compliment. But when your coworkers, many times to me they were beyond bigger than life. I grew up in this business, so I respected them. They worked in the ring. I just was in the ring. So whenever they would tell me something like that, are you kidding? I took that as a compliment, and it was a compliment. I never, with so many people thinking, oh my God, the wrestling business, that was rough. I didn't. It was rougher growing up in it, not with the vents and any of that. The way that it was going for us, it was happening so fast, and we were all so grateful of the money that was coming in, and that it was catching, and that people were coming to the matches and selling out, and they liked the program, they liked what was going on, and to me, to be a part of that, and was a dream come true, because my dad, from the time I was little, and wrestling fans would come up to him, and of course they knew him, and they'd ask if, hey, is that the next Moolah? Is that the next world champion? Is that the next ladies wrestler? And my dad would just, oh my God, he would just have a fit. He'd cringe, because he never wanted me in the business, because back in the day, my God, look at Moolah. I just drop her name because she was one of the first beautiful ladies I ever met, and held herself that way. So, but as you get older, it's not so show busy. They get out there, they fluff their hair, they look good, and then their bodies are taking a beating, and they're just in there with the guys. Probably a lot of them back in the day, and even God, I could drop so many of the good ladies that worked harder and had to work harder than the men to even get any kind of credibility. It wasn't anything that I see today, and you guys know that. Anybody that's out there would know when they would see old women. Well, look at Sherry, and I'll put her over and bow to her any day, and because she worked hard. She worked harder than some of the guys did, because she did. She gave.
She was one of a kind.
So anyway, I don't mean to take over the conversation, but thank you.
Fine, Mike. This show is all about you. Now, I'd like to introduce you to the host on the panel. I'm
yes,
the Don.
Please.
I'm the Don. We're also joined by Peter Alden.
Hi, Mrs. McGuirk. Happy Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Well, thank you. And it's Peter, is that right?
Yes, it's Peter from Toronto.
Hi, Peter. Well, Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year, and thank you for having me on. And be sure that when you ask these questions that you don't hold back, okay? I can answer them.
Cool.
And we're also joined by our other host, who is a huge fan of yours, and that is Lucien Toombs.
Bon Natal, Don, and Merry Christmas, Mike.
Merry Christmas to you. Now, how do I address you? Sir Toombs, or how do I...
Call me whatever you like.
Okay. Hey, Toombs. All right.
Mike, you grew up in the wrestling business. How was it growing up in a wrestling family?
The most interesting thing you could ever believe in a kind of a life that you couldn't share it with anybody unless, you could share it with, like the Von Erichs. They knew, of course, they were not at the time when we were kids growing up, they weren't in the ring, but we had fathers that were, in this crazy business that not anybody that we went to school with understood. You're talking, now we're going to go back to the 70s, and, we still weren't really accepted. We were still on Saturdays, either in with the cartoons or something else, that was where we were programmed, and that's where you could sell the tape. But it was different in that respect because they looked at you differently, maybe kind of campy, or it wasn't anything like I wanted and how I respected it. So I meet people growing up that wear masks, and they, I'm scared to death of them in the arena, and then they come to our house and they eat dinner and play cards, and I don't differentiate, between the two until later on. My dad never even, I guess everybody knows that, the smarting up to the business, so to speak. I still protected life and limb, but he never, it was like Santa Claus. He never told me any of that. You just kind of watch, and you get at an age where you respect it because it is a business, it is a wonderful living, and that the people that are in it, back in the day, these guys, lived in these territories with their families. The promoters, most of them that I knew, and was from the Von Erichs or the Kansas City, Bob Geigel and Pat O'Connor, you would go over to those houses. Every Christmas, the holidays always makes me a little sad nowadays because it was always filled with families coming in, or they were getting ready to leave, and my dad was always making sure that they had, whether there was fruit or what did the family need, and because they worked and lived, and so I got to know all these wonderful families, from the Galintos, which Italian, Zuma, all these people that, I knew different languages, could speak them, but knew, Hiro Matsuda was over at my house when I was a little girl. And I remember the rib that they were putting on him, that he was new in the country and a brilliant wrestler. And I remember him walking around with this box of, milk bones for the dogs. And the wrestlers were putting a rib on him and told him if he ate those that, it's good for his bones and his body and stuff. He wasn't privy to the rib at the time, but I'm looking and thinking, oh my goodness, oh my God. And it was just like, it was wonderful. They'd come over, they'd eat, they'd play cards. The wives would be together. The kids, we just knew if we don't bother them, we can probably do whatever and get away with it. Or, Sputnik Monroe would come to my house, and he had that white streak through his hair and was quite a colorful character. And I don't, my friends, some of them would go to the wrestling matches, and when we were little, we had the wrestling bear, but I don't know what they really took out of it, now it's sure they do. But at the time, when you were growing up, these little kids are like, wow, I've just been at the circus. It wasn't to me because it was something that I saw almost every night. But, we traveled. I was an only child, and my mom and my dad, we'd have Tulsa on Monday nights, and then Tuesday could be Fort Smith. Wednesday was Springfield, Missouri, and so on. And so about when I wasn't going to school, I was going on the road, and Springfield, for instance, and this is every week, everybody. This was back in the day when you had you have a television tape that runs on Saturdays, as I said earlier, and then you work around this program. So they see it on Saturdays, and hopefully what they see on tape, which is films usually in a studio, that would make them, to see further more of this. It was, more of a a tease to see that show to get them into the arena, because that's how we paid the guys. It wasn't off of television, obviously, because we didn't have what they have today. It's kind of hard for a lot of young people to understand. What, you didn't have cable? What, you didn't? No. So we would feed off of that, and then have your live shows. And this was like every week. So, and then Oklahoma City on Fridays. At one point, when my father and Bill Watts were running it, and Bill needed to come aboard at the time and help, they were running 2 towns a night, 7 days a week. And sometimes they would do 2 shows on Sundays. Now, this is between my dad, what they say is his territory was, where the television station could reach the audience. Well, that was our territory. And so if we owned the television part of it, that's where we would go and have your regular shows or feed off your spot shows, meaning a spot show would be something that we would hit maybe in the summer or in the spring or an off time. Maybe we couldn't get into a certain building because of a fair or something, so we would do a show that was somewhat close proximity to that town, and it would be a spot show. In other words, it was a spot. So I'm just trying to educate. Probably you all know that, but for those that don't and are listening. So growing up with those characters and being on the road with them, it was a wonderful life, and it makes you worldly in the respect to people that we're all different, but we're the same. We have families, and we might talk a little different, we might look a little different, and regardless of what some of the stuff I've maybe picked up something out of some of the people that have read said some things about my father, but you don't even in the 60s. We were around black wrestlers and wonderful people. So I learned a long time early on that we didn't see color. We saw people that went out there and worked and a living and believed, and a lot back then, they had some kind of wrestling background, or somebody had broken them in, that and we didn't have the bodies. I thought one of the first young people that I ever saw, oh my God, it was Jimmy. I was trying to think of them not too long ago. Oh my God, I was thinking of all these guys, and they were all the older guys, from the Bolos to the Assassins to, until DiBiase came up, and which is a dear friend, and I knew him when he was little, and my mom said, "Oh my God, those DiBiase boys are coming over," and he used to tear up I had stuffed animals that a lot of the wrestlers would give you, and he'd tear the heck out of them. He was a monster, and that was like at age 7 or whatever, but who knew years later that we would come around, and it was around in the mid-70s, 76, 75, that when that started happening, that, God, I was getting in. They were young people, and there was a future in this business, and it was growing, and there was an interest. And then early on in the 80s, to see it develop over the years from the time that I grew up in it, and then the music. Remember, guys didn't come out to music when you wrestled, and it was very serious. I mean, remember, they're trying to and did sell it and package it as a real professional sport. It is a professional sport, and they're actually doing what they do with their bodies. Or I would have never had. I've got a nice scar in my back, and I've had 2 back surgeries, all of which one happened when I was there with Vince, and then and I wasn't wrestling, and it was accidents happen. And I think that was another thing that worried Vince, is that, oh my God, I my back, and it was at L45 that happened, and I didn't even know what had happened. it was probably when I got home, and I mean, it was probably herniated, and I didn't know. I just knew I had a little bit of a back pain, but you don't sell it. You know, you don't ever. And I mean, like, I was off the road one day and just literally just like sneezed, and it was as if somebody had come up to my side and just put a knife in me. I mean, everything to my left leg went numb, and we had what happened. They explained to me that when it blew, when that L45 disc blew, it's like crab meat. So it exploded, wrapped itself around the nerve of my left leg, and atrophy was setting in. I mean, plain and simple. So because I can remember Savage, I'd talk to the guys, and they knew about it, and they're like, no surgery. Oh, no, don't do that. If there's anything, you just work it out. Because everybody didn't want, they thought, oh, God, Mike, you don't want to go under the knife. But I didn't have a choice. And 6 weeks to the day, I was off 2 TVs, because at the time we were doing every 3 weeks. I went back, and the only thing I couldn't, because if we went back and looked at some tapes, it's probably the only time, I know it's the only time that I never got to wear my high heels and my sparkly stuff, because I had to be in low, and I thought, oh, my God, isn't that funny how one thinks, oh, my God, I'm not going to be able to wear heels. Oh, Jesus, how am I going to go on? But, hey, it's fine. But to answer the question, I can tell you what a wild ride it was growing up, but it made me understand, and maybe it was for the best, it made me understand what it was going to be like for me, and that, that when they ribbed you, they liked you, and that you carried yourself as a decent human being. And I think that was a lot of my raising, and because my father demanded it, and once he knew I was hooked and loved it and respected the business, it was still hard for him, because in his mind, being blind, it was hard for him to envision, a woman in this business, because he knew how tough it was. It's tough for men in the business, but much more so now. So anyway, I told you, if you got me on, I could probably talk forever. But anyway, I'm sorry, that was a loaded question. When somebody asked me that.
Fine. That's fine.
Yeah, but that's okay with you. How about my other two? Let's see, we've got the Don, the Peter, and and Tim. Y'all still good? Still with me?
Yep, we're
Nobody's
with you,
asleep?
and we have nope, and Peter has a question for you also.
So I have a question for you. You were mentioning that you came from a wrestling family in a time when kayfabe was very much alive. How were you? Like, how much kayfabe was going around when you were growing up as a young child? And when did you start getting smartened up to the business that you're saying, wait a second, you know what? This is real, but this is choreographed and predetermined.
Well, those are two bad words. I don't like that. Oh, God. Predetermined, choreographed. Let me just go back to the first part of the question. When your own father I didn't even, like I told you earlier about if somebody was at a mass, but yet they came over and they were, I didn't know that. I didn't, I knew that because anything that I saw and that what my dad said, I won't have you guys riding with each other. It's a livelihood, don't blow it. And so that's what I knew. And I knew that even up to where Bill, you don't give away your livelihood. Here we are working our asses off, and you're doing this, and then you let people chat. And he also, another rule that my father was just adamant on: if you've got a wife, and that wife comes to the building and she's reading a book, she's going out to the car. If she's not interested because her husband, the fans aren't stupid. The fans are smart, and some promoters never realized that. My dad did, and the promoters that I knew, some of the ones I maybe these wannabes or something that came across that never really established themselves. But anybody, that I knew that had always been in the wrestling business, my dad knew him when he could see and wrestle. Those guys carried themselves. I've got a couple pictures in my hallway that when people come over and they don't know, really, they know what I did, but they didn't know, like, when I was little, and they look at these pictures, and these guys are wearing suits, and really it looked like, the Don and his family, I mean, it was, hey, we're going to go take a ride in the car, and you might not come back. Those it looked like that. They dressed well, they carried themselves well, and they protected the business. If they didn't and they came in, then you didn't stay. So growing up that way, I never suspected it. As I got older and watched it, but still that didn't even enter my mind until from Dick Murdoch. Dick used to talk, and he's like, "Hey, kid, you know what's up, don't you?" And oh yeah, right. And he's like, "I don't think you do." And I remember my mom saying something back when she married my dad. She was already married, and she was in the restroom with some ladies. Probably, I think, yeah, they turned out to be some wrestlers' wives, and they were talking amongst each other, not to my mom, and they said, "Well, I don't think she's smart." Well, my mom, being a country girl from Siloam Springs, Arkansas, took offense to that, and she walked up to him and said, "Oh, yes, I am. I'll have you know I've been to Drawn's Business College." Just spouted the whole thing off, and she didn't even know, and she was married to the man. So, so when I spoke to that, I came to my dad about it, and not that it was a major talk, but I was like, "Oh, yeah, Dad, I got that." And he goes, "What do you mean you got that?" And I happened to mention Ted's name, which that didn't go so good, but he was my age. He was around my age, and again, I went back to somebody I could identify with, and it was like I just told him that I found out about Santa Claus. It hurt him, because to him, he protected it so much so that I could have parties of my friends coming over, and you get to drinking. Oh God! And it's late in the evening. My dad always had somebody that drove him, because my mom would stay later or she'd go early. But he was always with drivers and other guys. And some smart person, smart aleck, somebody would, somebody that, just shouldn't have said it, and especially to him, and said, "Gosh, Leroy, I hear that that word, fake. I'm telling you guys." My dad dropped down on all fours, and he wanted to know where that smart SOB was, because he was taking him on. Honest to God, the guy had went to the bathroom and climbed out the bathroom window. He was gone, and I was like, "Well, Dad, you run another one off." So, that would be my dad. That would be that, and that was, oh gosh, probably, later on to where I knew it or anything else. But he never. Till the day up to he died, that was something that he held very, very close to him. So there's your answer. And the second part being, like how I handled that, knowing it, or what, so I can answer you correctly.
Just basically when you smartened up, and how did you deal with it? You came from a wrestling family where kayfabe was such a big deal, and then when you actually found out, when did you find out, and when was it, and how did you respond when you actually found out? Was it something of shock? Was it something of disappointment? Were you sad? Were you like, "Oh,
no.
Wait a second"?
Oh, yeah. God. I wasn't sad.
You're around a lot of intense guys, like Bill Watts. Bill Watts is very, from what I've read, is a super intense guy. And he would actually have it. So if one of the heels or baby faces got beat up in a bar fight, he would literally fire the talent. So how did you deal with that?
Bill's a whole different subject. A whole different subject. No, there was not anything probably, and I think the best way to explain it, that I respected it more. I definitely knew that, okay, people are watching the kid, or and they'll ask because they think, well, they'll try to lead you into that's horse shit, don't you, up there? And the best thing that they could do is like, I don't know what you're talking about because I'm being entertained right now, and there's a sense of that I still believe in and will always protect it. I don't care what they tell me. If they're going to tell me about wrestling, I'm going to tell them about every pro football game and every horse race and everything else. I said, if you want to get that way and you want to get that cynical, let me throw something else at you. Are you not entertained? I don't know about the horse races and all that. I'm just saying, but it's entertainment. And as I always knew, this one word, you tell them, kid, it's showmanship. And I was like, hey, I'm all about that, And so I think that part of it, I respected it more, but I also just didn't make it a big deal, especially to my dad. Just that I wanted, I understood it better instead of like turning my back on it or being ashamed or embarrassed, because where I went to school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it was Addison, and I went to school with prominent people, prominent families. And, again, I go back to the fact of, my dad had a history here in Tulsa, so a lot of them, that was a respectable part, but there wasn't a kid that didn't know what my dad did. And you have a first name, of Mike. And there's a time I go through school that I was like Kathleen because I hated Mike. It was a boy's name, for God's sake. I got enough trouble. So, and that, again, at about the same time, you grow up, you love the people that are in it. You asked me how growing up into it. So all that combines with it catches you. I mean, it was I don't know. It was and something that I wanted to be a part of. I knew nothing else. I still, like you guys, to ask me to talk about it. I don't ask you, for you people out there listening, I don't ask anybody, say, hey, I got to know what you're going to ask me. I can, one or two things. I can choose not to answer, but probably won't. But or I'll answer. I don't go through any rehearsal or anything, and just wing it. But that's where I loved it, is that I respected it more. I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't know how. I didn't even think about it. So first thing that hit my mind is, well, I'll marry a wrestler. Then I'll be, because I had gone to college and in a direction that my dad wanted me to stay into, and didn't happen. I went ahead and graduated at Oklahoma State University. Went up to a girls' college at William Woods, and then came on back and finished up at home where my father had gone. And after that, it's like, what do I do? Well, the best thing to do is go to work for your parents if you can find a way. So a lot of it, I started out selling the programs, just being around it. I still had other jobs. I worked for the fairgrounds a lot, so I wasn't a full-time. That was something that my dad still was like, So I was just there on the towns. I started going back on the road because, again, when I was younger I did, but as I got older, I'm out of school, I'm going on the road. So I wanted to help the box office where my mom wanted to stay home a little bit more. So that kind of thing, I just kind of eased into it. But it just fell. It just, it was just a natural transition, just even how I got in with Vince or anything else, because I'd been in it with all my life. I was pretty toughened up by the fact of being around the business, knowing it, knowing you could be on top one day and erased the next day, because that's how the booking happened. I've seen, like you were talking about Bill, I've seen him take that other end of that pencil and erase that guy's name, and he was, literally, he was gone. He not only was not on the books, it was like he doesn't exist, and I thought that was pretty tough because my father had a whole different take on treating the boys, and that's why Bill had said that my dad didn't make a good promoter, although he had sustained a pretty good reputation until Bill came around. And Bill made it, I understand that just made it a little bit bigger, but for himself as well. But my dad treated the guys because he had been there. He knew what it was to be disregarded with other promoters that could hurt you. And, my dad worked back in the day that you didn't have the highways, and it was tough old road. And some promoters you drive, hundreds of miles, and they could just, not pay you, or they were horrible. So my dad always took care of the boys, and and especially he promoted family, and that's why we had long old trips. I mean, from Pat Patterson to tell you, oh my God, Oklahoma territory when Leroy sends you down to Louisiana, because those trips were hard and they were long, and But if you made it through Oklahoma and went on, then you respected those short trips because they had some tough ones. It was long. So anyway, I'm sorry. I go too long. Sorry.
That's fine. You're fine. And,
Thank you.
And Lucien has a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting back to family members in the wrestling biz, how's your son's career going along?
My son has chosen to not partake as much. He will wrestle. There's a group that he'll usually go to Texas. Now he did go back to Florida and wrestle a little bit, but that's not the direction he's decided to go anymore. When he was down there in development, and I just wish I think he went down there too soon. He was pretty young, and I really wanted to hold him back, but he went down there when he had so much competition. Everybody's son was down there, and he went in with the idea that they were going to, what I had taught him, what he had known growing up, that they take care of you. They don't take care of you anymore. And when I say take care of you, your family, we're not going to let you have 3 concussions in 6 months. We're going to teach you how to not have a concussion. Not that we're going to let this guy that's trying to get over beat the hell out of you, and send you to the hospital. He didn't understand that. I think it was the hardest part for me to get, is like, because I went there and talked to Dusty, and I was like, Dusty, Jesus Christ, who's watching the store? And I think everybody was trying to save their job. It was Vince having the developmental started out there with Steve Kern running it, Florida Wrestling, and I love Steve. I loved all of them. I love Terry Kern, his wife, and have known him since I married Brian, and great people. But they were all, working for, it was a different day and time, and one day they would be training him the Dory Funk style. Dory Funk Jr. would be there, and then the next day somebody would come in and they go, nope, we're not doing that anymore, changing up to do this. So nobody really, I always said to myself, I don't think the left hand knows what the right hand's doing, and it, I don't know, it hurt him mentally, and I also told him, I said, why don't you just, come on back. He stayed down there a year and a half, and the education that he got, though, was brilliant, because he did grow, and to carry on to where any time that he steps in with somebody that's seasoned, he won't do that anymore. He'll only step in with somebody seasoned, because he's got these kids that don't know can hurt you. They can, because they don't know. And so you've got to be careful of who your opponent is, or who you're in that squared circle with, because it's so they don't know how to work, simply. Okay, so he went on. After that, I told him he could come back and save the education that he's got in his brain, because that was one thing. And another promise I had made to Vince is, he said, just do me a favor. He said, as your dad would. And this goes back to, I knew Vince Sr. before I ever knew Vince Jr., because of these National Wrestling Alliance meetings that they used to have once a year, and all the promoters that within the United States, we had Japan, Australia, Jim Barnett, all the promoters belonged to this NWA, including Vince Sr. Although that he had his own backup there, he was still, we all got along, I say we all, the promoters got along, and if they didn't, my dad and Vince Sr. was on the grievance committee. So there was always, we're going to get along, and if there's a problem, it was where they all came to meet. They met during the day. They had their good times, and two, they shared the world champion. And that was another thing, to be a National Wrestling Alliance. And so it's complicated, but it was really neat to see all these people. So I met the promoters and knew Senior long before I knew Junior, and I used to hear him talk about his kid Vinny, and he's not into the wrestling. He works in television. Boy, does he! So that was his. That was my introduction, and I've got pictures of when my dad and my mom would go to these alliance meetings, and then I've got pictures of his dad and mom, of Senior and his mom, which I got to give to him. I still have, because I ran across them too in his storage, and he would like to have those. They're really great. So, those kind of things about how the alliance used to be, and who knew that I would be working against the alliance? Because when cable television came out, fellas, everybody, girls, guys, ladies and gentlemen, kids alike, it changed everything as far as the business that I knew, because it took away your weekly show. You could, why, at a hardworking family, why would they pack up and go to a show when they can see more stars, more people? We can tune into Georgia now and see Atlanta wrestling, and on Monday nights we could see this new program that's coming out of Madison Square Garden. So I saw that dynamic change, and anyway, go back to, did I answer everything? I wish you'd give me a yes and no. You'd probably be bored to death, but anyway.
Oh, no, you answered the questions really thoroughly, and we like that. Now, the listeners like that as well. Now, in the WWF in the mid-'80s, you got the call. If I'm not mistaken, you were the first woman ring announcer. I might be mistaken, I'm not sure. But how did the locker room and the gang accept you behind the curtains backstage of that promotion, and also being involved in some spots in the matches? Because I know I watched several of them yesterday, and Nick Busick, who was an awesome guy, you were in a spot with him and such. Not a physical
My
spot.
bully.
But, yeah. But were the spots...
And damn that Harvey
wrestlers...
Wimpleman, I'll tell you what a little pipsqueak, he's running around.
But would they come up to you ahead of time in the back room and say, hey, Mike, I got an idea. What do you think of all that? Like, was that all part of the writing, or was that just like improv? Or they just
Here we go.
Let's just
There's
work with
again. I never knew.
Not improv.
Never.
Yeah, not improv.
That was. Yeah. I thought I guess they just knew, or I thought, well, maybe this is a big rib for Vince. Watch this, and I knew half of the stuff that Bobby had to say about me. That Vince, I knew it, and I could take it because it was great. But I never knew. I'd look over, and look for help with my referee. I'd look over there, down there at the ring table, and they're just like, I don't know. And we had a headset. That was the gorilla position, but I didn't know. And so here they come doing this thing. So the only thing I have back in my head is, what would I be like? And I want to think like my fans, our wrestling fans would think, is what kind of person would be able to talk back to this big gruff guy? Then I just shrunk his character if I'm going to talk back to him, and I'm bigger and better than that. So I've got to and truthfully, I did respect him, the character too, except Honky Tonk. I still have beef with him, and he knows it. But anyway, and I love Honky, but dang, that's Elvis, man. Don't be taking Elvis out of the building. So that was the truth. I'm not kidding you. I was like, how dare him? And that was the beginning of Vince. But I never knew the spot that was coming up and to be thanked for it, how if it turned out okay or whatever. But I wanted it. Myself would say I wanted longevity, and that's how I had approached this thing with Vince. Is that I was not going to show any partiality to the heels or the babies. I knew to be careful of them because everybody, no matter what, when you step into that ring, all bets are off. Everything is different. And you are just now, if people can understand that, you're a different person when you're at home than you are at work. When they step into the ring, that's work, okay? So we're all working. And it's not like everybody, like, okay, we're working in that word of fake or choreographed or anything like that. We're all in this, and when I get out, anything can happen, and that's the thing that, accidents happen, stuff happens, fans that come up to you or knives, and, when I was growing up, Danny Hodge was stabbed by his own father because the guys wore the same color trunks, and Danny's dad now this is, we go back to something about believability. Families didn't know, and they actually did. The father sent Danny Hodge to the hospital, his own son, because he went up there, and that also, too, was the end of wrestlers wearing the same color of tights. You never know. And I remember the Underwear Taker, guys. Undertaker would tell me, "Hey, my mom's in the audience, and this is like the first time, and we're working a program, and if she comes, she's over there, like in the 5th row, and if she starts coming up, hold her back." And those kind of stories are real. That's what Mark had said. He's like, she could end up right up here, and I said, I got her. No problem, I'll take it. But I didn't know any of those. And if they used me, we were going to do a thing, and I don't know if it happened with Rick or whatever, but we were working. Vince only gave me a clue that he wanted to do something big with Rude and I. So whatever it was, they worked out, and I just went along with it. And, he would love to do his thing in front of me, then sweat and throw it at me, and I was not to be impressed. But the one thing that Vince did, and I appreciate that, is don't touch her. You're not to touch her. You're not to give her a kiss. Nothing. That's pretty cool, So that was that, because that helped me. It helped. I was, and then and of course Bobby, God bless him. It was that he wasn't interested in me. It's like, okay. Anyway, you can tell I had a good time with them and how they treated me. Okay.
It worked, though. It all worked.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them I knew, okay, from being, Duggan, DiBiase, Matt Bourne. If I didn't know them, then like Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, which was one of the first people that gave me a call for the ring, and I knew them when I was a little kid. And then Terry had come back to the territory in the late 70s, 80s, worked for my dad. This was before he went with Vince. And I'm still friends with Facebook with Christine, his widow, and we could share stories. She brought some stories up that I can't even remember. Good God, on the road. But I knew them, and there was a respect there. But let me just tell you that there were some that I didn't know. I didn't know Lombardi. I didn't know the guys that were from back east. So there was, and the one most of all, is Howard. Here's this girl from Oklahoma, and she's coming up here, and okay, we'll see how this, because already Missy Hyatt had come in before me, and Missy didn't last. Missy had, I don't even want to get into that. That's something that Missy will have to talk about. I'm not aware of, I just knew she was there, and then she was gone. And it was a good timing for me. I had already been working for Vince by pulling the ring for him when he first started going against the NWA, the Mid-South, all of that. And because that was, as soon as Senior died, Vince, he just morphed into this, I'm going everywhere. So we got, the call came in as, hey, they called McGuirks because they were coming into Oklahoma City and probably want to do some other towns. You got a ring. Well, when my mom and dad sold out to Bill, but there was, I just couldn't see, don't let it all go. So I kept one ring, and the 18-foot, that 2x12 boards in it. There's no spring in it. It's a free suspension ring, which is held up by a steel cage, and I also had, still have the ring, steel cable ropes, which are great. And, I mean, when you go into these steel cable ropes and that bounces you back, you better know what the hell you're doing or you're going to be right, your face is going to be right down on the mat. So that's how I started. So I've been working with these guys on shows before I've been on national television. The ones that was hard was like the ones that I hadn't been working with. Howard. The television guys were easy to do, but it was, it was hard for him, and all I wanted to do, and I told him, I said, hey, look, there's this in my mind. Vince likes it. I think that what I'm trying to portray is that a woman can get up there, not just anybody, a woman, and carry herself and be presentable. I'm not selling sex. I'm not selling anything. I'm selling, here we go back to the very beginning, I'm selling credibility to the show. That's what I wanted, that it's professional, and I'm to act that way, I'm to dress that way, and so that's what I used to sit in the seat as a fan, because let's go back to, I wasn't smart. I didn't know anything about the business until I was about 18. So anybody that was in that ring, I knew would that guy just shut up and get out of there? I want to see wrestling. Or did I see somebody that was up there and was dressed nice and, was able to, you could hear him, you could understand him, hailing from parts unknown, weight unknown. Here is. So that came just by being around it. There was no anything else but that. So I wasn't privileged to any of that, and how those guys took me, I'm just grateful. And I always reminded anybody, like Kurt Hennig, which I dearly, a super person, super. Lenise, his widow, is another. I mean, just that guy. So we didn't like each other. I thought he was really the character or whatever until we were forced one night from in a town to ride together in a cab to go to the hotel. And he said, I hope you know you're paying for your part. And I was like, I hope you know I'm not paying for your part, buddy. And, he said something about how many kids he had. And I said, well, this is what I'm working for. And he goes, oh, really? And I said, yeah, I got a girl and a little boy, and this is what I'm doing, and this is a job too. And he goes, yeah. So there again, he was like, yeah, your dad used to hire my dad, Larry the Axe. You bet. He worked in Oklahoma Territory. So that kind of stuff is where you had the help. If somebody was in the back that might, well, who is she? I had help from good people, the Macho Man, again, a second-generation wrestler, that said, hey, and then by design, an example, when Macho Man would point you out and he would talk to you, those guys are sitting back there and looking, and it was like, wow. So and a lot of the rest of it was proving yourself. I never asked for any help. I always said I wished I was Liz, because Liz had somebody carrying her bags all the time. She always got the, she was protected, and Liz was like, God, I wish I could be in your position. But you learn to go and again, respect yourself, and others will respect you, do the job. And, when it came time for my bags or anything else, you think those guys got, reputation. They're not going to be going, here, Mike, let me help you with that, because the other boys are going to rib the hell out of them. I will say that Haku was and still is, I always remind him about it, when we would be on these flights and they still sold breakfast, they used to give you something to eat that was decent. Yogurt, I guess. Yogurt and banana was decent. And I maybe got overlooked because another wrestler might have taken 2 or 3, and I get that. He gave his to me, he said, but he didn't, he'd come out and he goes, "You okay, kid?" Well, I didn't have to worry about if I was on the road with Sherry and we were on a plane. We just had to worry about Fuji pulling a rip on us. So if Fuji wanted to sleep and we wanted to throw ice or, because I'm bored or having fun, and been on the road 2 weeks in a row and, oh my God, and you didn't mess around with Fuji either. He was the godfather. And that was another thing, and when it's time, there's no bullshit, and that means inside the ring or whatever. And then when there's time that they want to kid around, I mean, I had times that wasn't even caught on tape that, the rockers had come flying in my lap, and I was in one of those chairs that folded up. Well, I didn't have my hands, my legs. I'm sitting there dangling with Janetti on my lap, and they're just laughing their asses off. Fuji can't keep a straight face, but the crowd, the fans don't know. They because you still got somebody else in the ring, and they're covering it up. And I thought, oh my God, if people only knew. Anyway, but I just look at them and think, I didn't know, but it was fun. I went along with it. I didn't care. I wanted to be a part of it, and if they teased me, they might like me. So at least that's a good way to think, huh?
But I know
everybody
Fuji
still
was
with
the
me?
master of ribs.
Hey, out there.
We're with you. We're with you.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, Fuji was the master of ribs. I always known that. Larry Sabisco, a really good friend, told me about that. But the one question, you worked with Vince McMahon, and he's the king of professional wrestling right now. He's a genius in many ways. You had a great career through the WWF. You were not just a ring announcer, you were also a commentator at times. You were a producer backstage.
I was the first female color commentary that I did with Bruce Pritchard and the Duke, Woodchester, and we started that in Houston before I was doing anything on national television. I was doing local TV doing that, and then still pulling the ring. And let me just kind of back up and tell everybody, if they don't know, I started out with pulling the ring only by the association of, hey, I can get the ring there. I know, they after 2 or 3 times, they knew they could count on me. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have anything, in 1984. So they had to blind trust for somebody to be there. So it started that way. And the first time that I did announcing was in 1986. And it was in Memphis, Tennessee at the Mid-South Coliseum. Huge show. We had the Hulks and Dr. David Schwartz were on it, Moolah, all of the people. Andre was on it. And they had a radio disc jockey come out there that was local, and that was sometimes they did the trade-off in the payment and the promotion is to let their guy come in there and promote the station, and they got so many mentions on the radio. So guy comes out there, I remember it very well, and he was like, hey, yeah, hey, bing, bang, bang, totally not anything that Vince and, of course, Vince wasn't there, but Jack Lanza was the agent that night, and Jack was like, oh, God. I mean, you could just see it because here we go again. We old school, Jack Lanza. That's bullshit. We're not. I hope I didn't say anything wrong, you guys, listeners. Don't. Anyway, but I get
you
to talk.
You can say anything you want.
Locker room talk.
You can say anything
and
you want.
Get him off of there. He didn't want that, and he came to me. I had been wearing a tuxedo, and remember, I'm doing the ring. I'm doing the time. I'm not really carrying the jackets, but I got an old man that used to work for my dad, and he was on the road with me because he could set up the ring. I wasn't. I remember we're talking 2 by 12 by 18s lumber and putting those across heavy and 4 ring posts. No way. I did the driving and rented the ring, and then anything I ran the music. So anything that I could do to make it easier for the agents, because I knew what they're just flying in. Oh my God, I don't want to have to worry about the ring. I don't want to have to worry that it's going to fall down. I don't, everything else in the ticket office or the box office they could handle, but as far as out there, as far as the stage, you're done. You're covered. You're good. Just pay me. But anyway, they did very well. And so he came to me and he's like, come here, and sent me back to the dressing room, and he was like, here, you're the announcer for tonight. I just looked at him. I'm like, he goes, come on. He said, what, you've sit at the ringside before? Are you kidding me? My dad, I never sat at the ringside. I've never been this close to it. That was for the fans. That was for customers. If I sat anywhere all those years, it was always in the general admission, way in the back with the hired help. Okay, so there was not any privileges towards that, and that again was for what my dad said. The fans will look at you. Oh well, she gets to, she's taking up a seat. He didn't want that. That was for the people. So when that happened that night, I was scared to death. I knew those people, but I could tell you that I was going to get in that ring, and I wasn't even going to know them. So I get these cards. There's like these index cards, and I'm starting to write their names and their weights, and Jack was like, what's that for? And I said, so I don't forget. And he just threw them. And that's how he said, get on out there. And I just can remember I wanted it bad, and the thing was I loved Elvis. I named my daughter Priscilla, for God's sakes, and I was in Mid-South Coliseum, Memphis. I can do this. I can get this done. And my dad's in the audience, my mom, and all these people that I love and have looked up since I was a little girl, God, for sure. And I'm going to announce, I don't even remember, it's probably like several octaves higher, because I was probably like, hey, good evening. I was just racing through it. But anyway, that's how that started. Jack Lanza was huge. He was serious, but he also, I like the way you carry yourself and you got the job done. So I started getting to do those. And then I made a videotape, 15 minutes, just came up with that, a sellout in Wichita, Kansas, and the Hulk was on the card. And I thought to myself, the only reason I did this tape, I was like, Vince doesn't get to see this. He doesn't get to see a sellout. He doesn't get to see the reaction of the people. Wouldn't it be great that if I could get a video, of doing this? But I needed it to look professional. True story. Got up. It was there early because I had the ring, set it up, looked in the phone book, happened to get the guy that had invented the Skycam way back in the day. He came out and shot the best 15 minutes. Wish I had that video, too. But it was, I said, what I wanted was pan around the crowd, give it to where, they can see him come in, the reaction, and then the 1, 2, 3, boom, get out. But I needed 15 minutes. But the most important thing is the Hulk, is because this is why, so, and send it back. But yet, I also want you to include the introduction, which happened to be me. So, and that was only twofold. I wanted him to see that, but also too is, hey, I'm out here. I want to, throw me a bone over here. And it worked because Vince likes it to be his idea. And, hey, that's great. But it had to be his idea. So I threw the video to him. I got a call, and the end of their fiscal year was WrestleMania. So then you begin anew. And so that's when I started then on national television, was after WrestleMania 2. And went back east against the Howards, and I love Howard dearly, but I know that it must have been hard for me coming in and taking over eventually Mel's place, which I heard Mel just passed away. I'm sorry, but that's how it all came to happen, is step by step. But
Nelson, you had a great career.
Shoot me another question. I hate to go over, or I hope that wasn't too much information.
Yeah, no, you're fine. But a closing question is that you have a lot of people have their opinions, rumors, all that stuff. But what made you decide it was time to leave the WWF? And also, like, when you left the WWF, like, did you ever decide to go into WCW or another promotion, or you just wanted to get out of the business at that time?
No,
and
never
wanted
to get out of the business. The thing that was going on,
would we ever see you back in the wrestling business?
Yeah, I didn't. I get kind of choked up over that. Sorry, because that's me. I obviously I didn't have a problem. I hope your listeners can tell the enthusiasm that I have for it, for the business, and the people that are still in it, and we're in it, and it keeps going. It was at a time where sometimes you feel in the words that are saying, "Hey, you got to diversify." You're going to get stale. Things are changing. You could feel it, and oh God, there was more dissension in the back. There was, we had again this WCW was coming on, and Ted Turner decided he was going to, I can get into this, and the Bischoffs, and I might have met Eric a couple of times, but at the time I was like, well, who is this? He's never been in the wrestling business, and but they were paying really well, and I thought the best, and it is, I think, for anybody, it makes you better if you have competition, and that's what was happening, and they were paying crazy money, and so you started seeing them leave, our talent, starting to see more unhappiness, and there was just some problems, and you get to a point to where I'm thinking, God, I've got to be able to do something else besides this, even though I was told over and over, you'll be here forever. Even I said, well, what's going to happen if I can't even, walk to the ring? We will lift, we will lift you down into the ring. Just all that stuff. And I said, well, that's a great fantasy, but I'm pretty real here. And I'd been on the road for so long during my kids' lives growing up, and it came to where I thought, you know what, I'll step back a little bit, with the idea that, maybe I'll go WCW and the money and take it over there, and then, take me or take the Mike McGuirk character and make it grow a little bit. And I changed from the old men's tuxedo into the spandex because literally it was just too hard to carry and it was just gross. And then they had signed on those the sewing girls, and we were doing spandex, and I was like, hey, this is great. So it was lightweight. We did colors. We did all that. Vince liked it. It's good. So I was stepping back just to come home and be with my kids and just taking a break. Obviously, I'd had that the back injury, and I just wanted to step back and then kind of realign and not get out. Well, I went in to work for cable network in Tulsa Cable and TCI Cable, and got into the production part, which I'd been doing. No matter what, we were in the building all day long when we were filming, and I wanted to be a part of the production. I went everywhere. I liked to know what anybody and everybody was doing to make that show happen, and get along with them. And my God, we're on the road, and you see them, and you work with them. So I was around everywhere. So I did that. And was offered to go. I just didn't. I know it came down to, I can't do this. The only person that ever believed in me, besides my parents, of course, but was Vince. And it doesn't matter. I worked with him, never on a contract till the last year, and when it became getting in a contract, that was another decision. I'm like, God, I've never had any problem. We literally worked on a handshake. I'm not kidding. The man asked me, he said, what do you want? When I went to the interview, I talked to him at his house, and that was when I met the kids and Linda, before I even went on television, and sent me up to New York. I looked at the new studio, hung out with Pritchard, with Bruce, and he told me, and this is the truth. He said, if you had a magic lamp, and he told me this, and he said, and you had 3 wishes, what would it be? Well, good God, and he goes, because I'm going to give it to you. He did everything that he promised. I mean, he took care of me, and I mean by that, my hotels. He took care of me in the ring where nobody was. Never to mess with me. he and that doesn't mean don't hurt me, don't use her as don't lay hands on her, because that would give me a little bit of longevity. But I just part of everything, when you have signs is like, hey, this might be, it's changing. The whole dynamic was changing. People were disgruntled, and I never forgot that I had one foot still in reality of being a mom. And so that was what really did, was just all these things that were happening and the changes. And then, of course, we went through that steroid deal with, my God, Geraldo chasing you. We were in Biloxi, Mississippi, and just stuff that it was just getting nasty and dirty, and people were wanting to tear it down, and Vince was going through these lawsuits of defending it. So there was a lot of dynamic. It's like, it's time to back off, and I never thought that it would, where it just 1 year became 5, and I did go to Halloween Havoc. I would go to the other shows. I went out to Vegas to Halloween Havoc and saw my buddies. Met. That's when I actually met Eric, and then visited with Liz. So that's kind of where I just said, you know what, my loyalty still, no matter what Vince does or who he is or whatever, stayed with him, and I didn't sell him out or do anything. And hey, he never told me not to. Same thing when they asked about to take my clothes off. I thought, oh my God, thank God I didn't. But in my heart, I was like, who wants to see this? And it came to me through Vince, and he was like, it's up to you. They're going to pay a lot of money, and I didn't. It just was the fact that I my dad's sitting there, in my ear. Even though he had already died, I still, I wasn't raised that way. I'm not selling out, and I didn't. So those kind of things you just take into account. Is like, I didn't do that. I didn't do this. Hey, no, I'm going to step out. My heart's always with the wrestling business. It still is with any of the guys. Another thing I want to plug is CAC, Cauliflower Alley Club. Made my reservations to go. I've missed the last 2 years, but I was there when Brian was inducted, Brian Blair. And you go there and you see these guys, and it's awesome. It's like they're family. It's family. Hey guys, sorry, I just go. I'm excited, that was something I love so dearly.
I just wanted to get that out there, because a lot of people would just say their own opinions of why Mike McGuirk left, and I just wanted to ask it and get it out there.
I just want to know why they don't bring me back.
Hopefully we see you inducted into the Hall of Fame pretty soon.
Here.
Well, any help that I can get from you guys or anybody to say, hey, what about what about, she is in your book. I know, you remember her? But
I was in the wrestling business with Jimmy Valiant and Larry Zbyszko, and worked with a lot of people in the South. So, even Zbyszko could go on and on when you're talking to him. And when I talked to him about you, he said the same thing. He says, this is your first female announcer who did a lot of revolutionary stuff in the sport, and she should have that spot. So, and I know Peter has the closing question for the evening, the last question, because we kept you over. I know you wanted to be on for an hour, and I didn't want to go over, but there's so much stuff we could talk about. But Peter has the last question for the evening for you, so I'll give
that
mic over to Peter.
You announced a lot of Andre's last matches later on in his career, and near the end, when he was a manager, when he wasn't able to wrestle anymore, you sat next to him throughout a lot of his managing run. My question to you is, what kind of relationship did you have with Andre? And, talk about your relationship outside the ring with him.
Andre was the sweetest, kindest. Look, how I got with Andre is, again, he worked for my dad. And when he was had very broken English, in fact, he had the translator with him, and he also went by how my dad treated him. And again, we worked because he was under contract through Vince Sr., and so when they, so to speak, lent the Giant to you, there were certain things and that you just did. You made sure that he had his own van, that, you know, the translator, that Andre was taken care of. That's, you know, and that he was comfortable. My dad never let him down. Andre, and how the matches were called, how it was done, how it was promoted. So, you know, there's a respect already there. Then I get on the road, and it was just another carryover to where, you know, and he, again, you know, you prove yourself. And I knew him, again, I'll go back to some of the private stories, whenever he was working for my dad, and, of course, my dad wouldn't go out, and he didn't do that and stay up late. There was towns, but his daughter would, and so I would be with some of the fans, some of the ringside ladies, the older ladies that used to cook, and we'd go to a little club, and they would always open it up for us. They were fans, and they could close it. So Andre, one night, he bought the whole thing, and I mean, we didn't leave till like 5 a.m. It was, and, you know, this, again, I think back, how did we get away with it? But we did, and everybody was in there. We ate, we had fun, drank like crazy, because Andre was buying it all. And, I mean, he actually did the thing where, you know, you go up and you sit on him, and there was like 6 women, and he, you know, lifted us up in the air. To me, I loved Andre because he's sitting there, and he's on $6 Million Man. You know, oh my God, you're with you know, Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett, and he knew him, and he was just a cool guy. And once you talked to him, and he loved my dad's ranch. He never got to go up there, but he loved talking to my dad about the ranch, which he ended up having a fine one of himself. But he liked my father. He liked the way I carried myself. He had a hard time with Sapphire. And it was nothing that Sapphire did. It was something that, you know, he didn't. If you weren't familiar with Andre, and you know, the Giant didn't always like everybody, and it wasn't. You had to be pretty darn. You know, don't be coming up there and being bullshit or anything like that, or you know, don't be acting anything better, because he was, you know, this is a Frenchman, and a rather large one, and he could be your best friend, or if he didn't like you. But I mean, the first thing that you did is you show him respect, and that was not a problem. You know, it's kind of hard to miss, anyway. And you would go in, and he wanted to kiss. He's a Frenchman. So he would always kiss you, and he'd stop the game, cribbage, whatever, and go over there. And I just always still remember how sweet he is. But, I mean, the lips are like all on from my nose down, you know. It's just some big lips. And he's a sweetheart. But he could talk to me, or he'd come down there and they'd put him right there. He knew he would be okay. He knew whatever happens that I was looking around, and I would tell him, you know, hey, look over to your right, or, you know, some fool's coming about, you know, behind you or whatever. And I don't say some fool. When I'd say some fool, somebody that could be potentially dangerous to us, because we don't know. God, we had people throw chairs at us. So, you know, I always watched out for him, and I loved hearing him, and I loved seeing him, you know, his reaction on a match, or, you know, he was getting tired, and bless his heart, there's nobody that would understand until you met him and how fun he could be, and he loved entertaining. He loved people to have fun, and he was comfortable with who he was and his size, and that was another cool thing. You know, he was just a. I miss him, and when you had the Giant like you were okay. You know, you were okay. So yeah, when he'd sit by me, that was the things that we would talk about, or I would listen to him and get a feel about the match, or, you know, there'd be times that he could shake his head, and I thought, oh, you know, he was not happy. And so, yeah, somebody sent me a picture recently, and I thought, man, I'd love to have, make that big, because some of those times that you're there and he's trusts you enough to sit next to you, it's pretty cool. And then to even discuss the match, oh Lord, it was even better.
But Mike, we really appreciate you coming on the show today, and we learned a lot about you and your career.
God, I don't hear anybody. I hope I didn't bore you.
Anything like that. I hope. Believe me, we're so in depth with your story about your career, and it was awesome. And I mean, I'd like to have you on again and talk more if you would like that, or have any problem with that.
Sure.
Because there's so much more we could talk to you about.
Hey, are we okay? I mean, would you have me back on too? Tunes?
Oh, my God.
I got tunes and...
I could have went for another 4 hours.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of the quiet and shy type, so I don't know if we can, don't talk much. But sure, and just to tell your listeners, thank you. You guys are great and wonderful and so professional. You've been so patient to get me on, and I can't even begin to tell you the artwork that's out there that you've done, and just the preparation. And I want everybody to know thank you. I hope that this has been enlightening for some. And Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy New Year. And have me on.
Merry Christmas to you too.
And
Merry Christmas to you and your
anybody
family
that can,
also.
Hey, Mike McGuirk, Vince, bring her on. Just a cameo. Just hey.
Hey, the raw anniversary.
I'm still out here kicking.
Right. But thank you, Mike, for coming on the show today, and Merry Christmas to you and your family, and Happy Holidays.
Thank you so much. Bless you guys. Bless everybody out there. All right. Be safe.
Good night. Be safe. Have a great evening.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
And we were joined by Mike McGuirk. She was the former WWF ring announcer from the 80s and 90s, and